Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sustainability Chats with Friends. I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest because we did our master's degree in sustainability together at Harvard, and she has just the most incredible background and insights on the world and everything and the systems. So I can't wait to dive into this conversation around the corporate system and how we can change it for it to be more sustainable, circular, and regenerative. So, Katrine, welcome. Hello. Could you
Hello.
please introduce yourself?
Sure. First, thank you so much, Isabel. It's so nice to see you again, after those years of study and being able to share a bit of my experience. So, yes, I'm Kathrine Maceratta. Well, as you might guess from my accent, well, I'm originally from Chile. I was raised in Brazil, but I've been living in the UK in London for the past 16 years. And well, and I've been, yeah, my background, as you mentioned, I worked almost 20 years in the corporate world in big organizations like Unilever. And for the past 9 years, I've been working as sustainability consultant, for a lack of a better word. But what I've been trying to do is to bring a different perspective to organizations, to invite them to see the holistic impact of what they do. And by doing that, trying to unlock meaningful change that can be better for companies, for people, and for the planet. But we're going to talk more about it, I suppose. So that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, for those, I do want to list off quickly some of the companies that you've worked with. So you worked at Unilever mainly in marketing, right, for 20 years. And then through your consultancy, Gaea collaboration, you worked with Mondelez, Danone, Havaianas, Kellanova, which used to be the Kellogg company, and Unilever. And so like it's hard to come by bigger organizations and companies to work with. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to hear your thoughts on how sustainability can be leveraged and kind of what the barriers are to doing that. And so I thought it would be a good thing to start out our conversation by kind of grounding us in the system and kind of how you define the system and yeah, kind of how you think it influences corporate behavior.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to start our conversation because my approach to my work has been on a systems-based approach that we're probably going to talk more about it. And we are talking about the corporate system. That's where my experience comes from. And that says a lot about how I've been looking and observing what's happening in the system. So if we start like by defining what I think is a system and what I have learned about different definitions of a systems, I like the one that says that it is an interconnected set of relationships that produce some results. Sometimes it's not very evident what the results are produced, but it goes towards an objective. And a system has a set of elements, it has a behavior, it has a purpose, and has this ability of self-organize itself to produce pretty much the same results over time. Has this ability of self-organization. And intuitively, I think we know that because we are part of many systems. We have our family systems that we know that sometimes it's very difficult to change in terms of behavior and keep bringing the same results. We are also part of other systems where we have less power to influence, but we're still part of them. Education system, because we studied and were, especially when we were studying. Health system, because we use that system. And even like if you think about the Earth is a system, and Gaia theory is one of the theories that explain how the Earth also organizes itself to keep breathing and producing life. And in the same way, we are a system as well. Yeah, we self-organize ourselves to keep alive, which is the main purpose of our bodies and minds. So that's a little bit of what I think of a system. And I bring a lot of knowledge from Donella Meadows, who I have studied, and is one of the people that I admire and have described systems and have worked on system thinking.
Oh, amazing. Can you tell me more about their work briefly? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, it's Don Alamido's
Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
misheard. There
Don
was a
Alamido's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
on system thinkings, and
Yeah.
I think in systems is one of their books that I have study and then really guide my work.
That's amazing. That is a great book as well.
Yeah, I think we saw it in Harvard at some
Yeah, we
point. Yeah,
did. We did. But I love that kind of holistic view that you have. And so I'm guess kind of from your perspective, what do you well, actually, I think first of all, I think it's really interesting to ground corporations in the same way that we're kind of grounding ourselves and the earth and all of that. And so can you see kind of what the barriers are for corporations? Because you must have experienced it firsthand.
Yes, I think you mean for them to become more sustainable. Yeah, what is holding
Yeah,
them back?
totally.
Yeah, and what I answered is a lot based on my experience, especially in the corporate system and in the fast-moving consumer goods. Yeah, which is the as many of the companies you mentioned. And I think what is interesting for me is that corporate system also have a set of behavior, it has a purpose, but it also is part of a larger system, as a subsystem, as I see, of a larger system that is the economic system.
Mm.
So, and the corporate system has a set of rules, it has a purpose. And what I'm more, where my experience comes from is mostly on companies that are listed companies, where their objective, publicly traded companies, where their objective is the main purpose is profit and growth, because they have an obligation with the people that put their capital, so to shareholders.
Right.
So, and that's kind of what it's also one of the elements of system is the rules of the game. The rules of the game is that we keep the system going as long as they produce growth and profit, and we maximize the return of the investment, which is to the ones that put the capital down.
Mm.
So that itself is kind of the framework where everything that happens on a corporations needs to respect. That's kind of the framework. And what happened with sustainability? So, because the question is, why they can't within that system become more sustainable? Why we're seeing
Mm.
that it's so difficult for companies to change? And we have seen, I'm sure many of the listeners have seen in the press, companies that have revisited their sustainability targets and they were more aggressive about, change of packagings, and they are not now. Well,
Mm.
because sustainable practices in many ways challenges short-term growth, and
Mm.
growth, as we just said, is key in that system.
Right.
And it challenges because it decouples sustainable practice like circular economy practices, try to decouple, extraction from value creation. And to do that, you need to rethink the whole system. You need to think about a different logistics. You need to rethink about different consumer habits. And
Right.
although those new, more resilient models, like circular economy models, will have better returns, I believe, in the future, that needs a new setup. That will probably need to pause some of the short-term growth that you get with linear systems, unsustainable systems. And that is something that not many companies are willing to go through because of this whole demand and the pressure for short-term results that happen in the corporate system.
Right. That's really
Does it?
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's sounding like the financial system is kind of the main, or the economic system, as you put it, is kind of the main barrier to change. Would you say that there are any other things like, I don't know, government intervention, or would you say that there
All
are,
the other systems, yeah.
yeah, because I think a lot of people think that it's just companies just don't want to change. And so that's why they're not changing. And so I guess I'm curious, it sounds like in your experience, it's actually this economic system that's holding them back more than their kind of intention to want to change. Is that
I
right?
it, Yeah, it's very nice that you bring that on the intention. So I have had the experience when I was in Unilever with people in Unilever and many of the companies that I have worked as a consultant, I have
Mm.
met the most well-intended people.
Mm.
People with, the heart in the right place. We want to do the right thing. We want to make this, want to change our products to be more sustainable, more regenerative. And at the end, it's very difficult for them because they become, most of these leaders, they are in situations that in system thinking you call double bind or catch 22
Mm.
because they have this pressure. Yeah, I want to change. I want to rethink about the way that we generate value for the company, for the shareholders. But I want also to reduce the extraction. I want to reduce my waste production, the effect on biodiversity, or whatever are the environmental impacts they have, while they have the pressure to keep producing the same short-term growth.
Right.
And while there are competitors that are not doing it. So
Mm.
if they're not doing it, they will lose market share that will affect the share price, that will
Right.
affect the return of the investments. So it is a very complex problem, because it's a complex system,
Right.
which is it's full of interactions. So it is. So when you say, is the financial system who is not allowing corporates to send? Yes, but not only, is
Mm.
also regulations. So it's, for example, fast consumer goods are companies rely a lot on plastic because of
Mm.
they're packet products company,
Right.
and the package, most of them are plastic.
Mm.
Plastic, and in their best cases that we can discuss is recycled plastic.
Right.
So yeah, the price of plastic is very, very low, especially virgin plastic, because of all the incentives and subsidies for fossil fuel that
Mm.
end up delivering and producing very cheap plastic.
Mm.
So yeah, it's regulation as well. It's the financial system, it's regulation. And it's consumers as well, because if you think, it is a completely different way of shopping for groceries. If we think that we want to shop in refills, it's completely
Mm.
setup of retail, is a completely different behavior
Right.
on, how do we go to the groceries, and, for how long we keep our things. And so is a much more complex matter than we need better COs.
Right.
We need better COs and a variety of other elements that can really change the way the system is operating now.
Right. I think you mentioned two really interesting points, which is like regulation, but also with that like certifications and then packaging and plastics and just plastic being so cheap. Is one of those sparking your interest more? Because I have questions about both. Would you rather talk next about like certifications, like has B Corp helped at all with any of this, or packaging and kind of talking about how, plastic is still being used, even though more and more studies are coming out proving that it's harmful to humans, especially when it's heated up in uh, food products.
Yeah, so let me answer first your question on certification like B Corp.
Mm.
So I think it's important to mention that although we are in a moment that I see that we have paused most of the advancements on sustainability, more in the sort of coming to the next level, which should be revisiting business models. I think it's
Mm.
also important to recognize that, I don't know, I think it was 15 years ago or 20, that wasn't a thing, sustainability in big companies. So, and I saw it also firsthand because the company I worked with, Unilever, was one of the pioneers, were the poster child on sustainability, and introduced this agenda that didn't exist anymore, or existed in the form or corporate responsibility, which was something different.
Mm.
So it became a thing. It is on every company, especially large companies, intentions, mission, mm, targets. There are things that have advanced most of the companies, especially uh, more in Europe, in UK, they have to report. There is reporting. There are mandatories like the CSRD. The advancements on renewable energy have been enormous, and mostly because renewable energy has become cheaper in most of the case. So it also kind of respect the theory of the chain, the system, yeah, because
Right.
they adopted it because actually at the end it was cheaper. So, but that's good news anyway. And regulations, there are some advancements as well. So there are now regulations on PFAS, that are the forever chemicals, that so some products are obliged, I think it's from early this year in Europe, and I think the UK as well, that you have to remove some chemicals that have been identified as toxic, and there is innovation in the companies to reduce it. So there are advancements. I think it's not fair to say that we have an advance in that sense. I think, and also in the case of new language for corporations that have been incorporated, like B Corps. B Corp wasn't a thing, yeah. And B Corp is a certification that it's establish high standards for social and or environmental impact. And I remember when I first learned about it, I said, "Wow, this is it. This is going to be something." Consumers will choose what to buy by looking who is B Corp, what isn't. It will change the way companies, introduce themselves, and that will be a before and after.
Totally.
And I'm probably that's what you thought as well. It hasn't been that dramatic. It hasn't been, unfortunately. And even there are cases, I think, that have been questioned, some of this B Corp, because they might reward B Corp certifications because you advance it in one side, of social matter, but you are still producing bad results in the environmental side. I don't know if you have what has been your view on B Corps?
Right. Yeah, I've had a mixed view on it over the years because I think when would it have been? Probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I think I saw it as this really amazing thing, and I had friends who were trying to get B Corp certified for their companies, and they had no background in sustainability, and they were kind of saying how hard it is to go through that certification process. But then in recent years, like fast fashion brands like Princess Polly have become B Corp. And I saw that Khloe Kardashian's Good American Jeans became B Corp certified. And I think that then kind of made me hesitate and reevaluate my initial view of it, I suppose, because I mean, obviously there's a rating system, so not all of them are rated the same in B Corp, and there's this sliding scale. But I think it kind of it made me take the certification maybe not less seriously, but it made me doubt its credibility a little bit. And so I think that that's kind of like a sad effect of getting fast fashion brands B Corp certified. But then at the same time, what are you meant to do, Because at least they're doing something that's more environmentally and socially responsible. But then how do you I think the thing is that B Corp should just change their certification label a little bit. So like gold standard or whatever it is, the best standard is like very obvious on packaging. And then the ones that are just entry level is also very obvious on the packaging. I think that's it.
I also saw Princess Polly, I think is the brand. There is a fast fashion brand becoming B Corp certified. And when I say that, it feels like it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because it's like, oh, this was something that should be a divisive thing for corporations. And I think we can't expect that consumers, will know, this is B Corp because it's, having organic cotton in their products, but it's still using polyester. We can't rely. So I think it can be misleading and borderline greenwashing. And I applaud the intention of B Corp and what they want to achieve, but I think maybe it's time for them to revisit their measurement guideline and be more tough, because I also know of business that don't want to go through the B Corp process because they don't believe anymore. So I don't think anymore is the case that if it's B Corp is good, and if it's not, It's not because there are other, especially entrepreneurs with small business that don't believe anymore and they don't want to go to a process that can give that certification to companies that are producing so much negative impact, like fast fashion,
Right, right.
and is still using polyester and the whole thing on microplastics. So it's difficult. And you mentioned something that I think it is a very interesting debate, which is, but what is better? To
Right.
have
Yeah.
initiatives like this or not to have them? I think it is something to debate, because I tend to think that I rather not to have initiatives that
Really?
are not producing real impact, because it delays us from material change. So
Mm,
would I still give to Princess Polly B Corp status because they are better in the choice of their cotton? For example, I don't know the detail,
mm,
or they are more rigorous with the labor that they hire.
mm,
I wouldn't, because I think we are not in a moment where we can afford more plastic pollution, more
mm,
toxicity, more emissions. And so I don't think the earth will forgive us. Oh, okay, I'm going to give you a couple of more years of
mm,
clean ocean just because you have the right intention. I think we
mm.
need more than right intentions now. We're
Yeah.
at a pivotal moment, I think, with our planetary boundaries, and we should be more rigorous about it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point actually, because I mean, I hadn't thought about it so much in those terms, but it relates to, so when we were preparing for this talk, you were really curious to know what the Sustainability Chats with Friends community kind of thought about the corporate system and what they thought the difficulties were for change, and kind of wanted to get inside their heads a bit. And so I asked and I put a poll up, and one of the things was Coca-Cola has been in the news for using large amounts of water in Turkey. And so my question around that was kind of, have you noticed changes or advancements in regulation that help reduce the environmental impact of big company supply chains? And so I think that kind of relates to what you were saying, like what it's, so if we do theoretically ban out these kind of certifications that kind of add noise to the sustainability movement instead of clarity, are there things that are actually helping to change the way that companies are in terms of their relationship to the environment and social welfare?
Yeah, because there has been initiatives on plastic, on reducing plastic, movement for on single-use plastic. There are coming, the regulations coming, especially I think the more advanced places are Europe. In the US, of course, some initiatives have been paused, and it's difficult to get more advancement in these matters at the moment. The case you mentioned on Coca-Cola is interesting yet. So the whole thing about the amount of water that they need to use and how this is allocated. So what else can be done? So water is a big thing, and where they are, companies like this are in places that they, extract water from places that community needs water for their crops and for their livelihoods. And of course, there are regulations, yeah, the mostly local, for example, water permits, that these companies have to apply to water permits. And I remember an amazing case in India, I think it was Kerala, where the community of the place where I think a Coca-Cola factory was going to be established, they stopped the factory because they community went against that motion, and they managed to revert the permits because they could see that this was affecting their crops and their livelihood. So it was amazing.
Wow, yeah,
But
that is amazing.
but there aren't many cases like this. Why? Because I come back to the corporate system being a subsystem of economic system. Because
Right.
when companies like this, especially when they go to places that are more unprivileged, what they promise to the communities is it's, well, I'm going to extract your water, but I'm going to give you employment. I'm going to give an economic activity. I'm going to bring, growth to your region and growth to your county and to your country. So it's very difficult to balance what they are offering, which is also true, yeah, because that's the matter with complex problems like this. That's as is true, and is also truth that they are extracting natural resources they need. So yes, there are initiatives that are advancing because, you know, as you said, for example, on plastic, I think we're going to get to a point that plastic will be like tobacco, you know, because we're going to understand how damaging it is in all levels and for our health. And there are going to be better regulations. But it still is not as much as we would like for the advancement of the environmental challenges that exist to our lives, yeah, to our livelihoods.
Yeah, totally. I think the plastic debate's a really interesting one. And I've been speaking to some plastic chemists recently. And yeah, it keeps coming up. I was in a webinar and the woman was like, what if we just outright banned plastic? And they were like, okay, well, I don't think that would work so much. Like it's quite a convenient material. It's quite lightweight. It can have some really good uses in certain cases. But I definitely think that in terms of kind of consumer goods, especially goods that we literally drink out of, eat out of, or put close to our bodies, like underwear and swimwear, I could definitely see those being banned or being treated, like you say, like cigarettes, where there's kind of like a warning sign that says this can and likely will cause infertility and cancer and hormone imbalance.
Yeah, and that's why you need so much regulations and policymakers to look at that, because it's something I'm confident that many consumers have no idea that what they're putting is plastic, you know, in your bodies with polyester, with their underwear. They have no idea that when you buy a bottle, you know, of water, you are ingesting microplastics. So we can't expect that consumers will have that kind of clarity. So it is very important that policymakers to bring with solutions that can protect population from consumptions that is in detriment to their well-being at the end.
100%. I'd like to, if you would like, to read out another question from the Instagram community, because I think it was quite a beautifully written one. And so it says, within a system of racial capitalism that depends on the global extraction and exploitation of land and labor for endless production and consumption, can environmental destruction ever be addressed or only minimized? And as long as marginalized communities and countries bear the brunt of that system, why would those in power address it till it's too late?
Yeah. So, yeah, there is a close relationship between environmental destruction and consumerism. And when I say consumerism, is to see consumption as a way of being, as a pillar of our society, which is the case. So I think, and we come back to the definition of system, and that's why I appreciate that was your first question, because the economic system demands growth, you know, and to keep the economic system stable, we can challenge whether this is the right economic system, which I think is a fair challenge. But at the moment, yes, it demands growth to keep things stable, employment and all other things. So companies need to grow. And companies to grow, they need to produce stuff for people to buy and buy more every year. Growth means this year you buy this 10, next year you have to buy 12. So they need people to consume. And it's very difficult to separate consumption from extraction. So there is a close relationship. So we go through, again, this economic system that demands growth means companies need to grow to charge the economy. People need to consume. Consume means extraction. And extraction is also very close related to affecting places where there is richer in resources that usually is less privileged places, less privileged communities. So there is this thing of what the person that sent you the comment says about racial capitalism, that is that angle of capitalism that end up affecting more negatively places, you know, where with racial differences from the ones that are mostly consuming. And this is true in many levels, because if you see wealthier countries, they account to something like 60% of the cumulative emissions that exist on the planet. And, you know, if you look at the emissions, I'm just talking about emissions because and it's just one of the planetary boundaries. Yeah. Right. So I'm not, we could, if we look at other planetary boundaries like production of plastic and biodiversity, I'm sure it's pretty similar. But if you look just at emissions, the per capita emissions of someone in the US is something like 7 times of someone in India. And those emissions are mostly affected, again, the unprivileged community. So when you see what is happening and the threats, environmental threats in places like Southeast Asia, at the moment is much larger than in places from this higher consumptions come from. So yeah, there is an imbalance there. And it's less difficult to tackle, as the person points out, because the ones that are producing most of the emission, they are not yet seeing so much of those effects as the people from places that have the resources, you know, and also are facing most of the hardest environmental challenges for the moment. But it's a very difficult one to address, and that's why there are some the whole movements on adaptations, and the COP try to advance on adaptation efforts, which is committing funds to, you know, help these communities that are having most of the burden of one of the effects, which is climate change.
Right. Yeah. It is a really dense question. So thank you for answering it and breaking it down in that way. And I think it kind of links back, hearing what you're saying then, to something that you said earlier, which was revisiting business models. And so I know that you're a massive fan, like me, of the circular economy. But again, so every year there's the Circular Economy. It's the name of an organization, for those listening who may not know. They produce a Circularity Gap report every year, and it's fallen again. And so the circularity globally now rests at 6.9% of the global economy. Well, that was in 2025. But I was just wondering, like, why is the linear system still favored by large brands? And does it ever get to a point where, because obviously the linear system is cheaper, and you've spoken so much about finances being a major decision factor, does it ever get to the point where the circular system makes more financial sense for brands, and where there's that kind of tipping point that happens?
Yeah, the Circularity Gap report, the last one, is something else that broke my heart. So because last time I looked at it, it was 2 years ago when I was doing my thesis for our master's degree, and it was 8.9%. Now we are on 6.9.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I first started reading them, it was on 9 something. It was like 9.2 or something, I want to say.
Yeah, and that means the reduction of materials that are being brought back to the economy and reuse. So it's a very sad number, and yeah, so the linear system. So I come back again to the system that I know the most, which is the corporate system. So the corporate system has one of the key success factors for their success, because they have been very successful. Those brands, big companies, they are absolutely everywhere. So it's been very good for them. And I'm not saying this in an ironic way. I say, like, it's been successful, and I was part of that system, and I was helping them to grow. So, and it is a very efficient, it's not effective, but it's a very efficient system. And it has been designed like this. So it's been designed as a system that it takes and use and waste, take, use, and waste. And it's a system that it doesn't account for the negative externalities that produce, such as, like you said on the Coca-Cola with water, the effects on communities where I'm taking my water from, that those communities will have less water. The effect of Princess Polly's polyester t-shirts that go to landfill and end up, polluting our oceans with plastics that, it's going to end up in all our bodies. They don't pay for those costs. So linear system is a great system in the sense of, if you look at just the perspective of the maximizing profit and shareholder and not accounting for the fact that it can have in the other systems that we're part from, because in the same way that we said the corporate system is inside the economic system, but all the economic system is inside the larger system of all, which is the planet Earth, the Earth system, with all their ecosystems. So this is the main system that we all depend on. There is no economy without the Earth functioning in the way that has served us for so many, for millennia. So so it's a very efficient system for the corporate system, the linear economy. If especially you think about, the whole thing on packaging, and as I said before, they use, because of how it is the systems behave, it looks for the cheapest way to produce, because the cheapest way to produce will give you the higher profit, which is what the system wants. So yeah, plastic, just so happen, is a subproduct of oil, petrol. So the more subsidies exist, the cheaper is the plastic. So it's very difficult to beat plastic as a material in terms of cost. It's very difficult. If you look just at that cost, you don't look at the cost you're causing to health, to planet, it's the best material. So just the only way to change that is to make it really expensive through regulation, stopping the subsidies, and setting an environment, a context that make plastic as expensive as it is for society, which we don't see that today. So, so circular systems, it is the way, is the solution, and that can be with plastic or not. It depends, like you said, depends what kind of product we're selling. We're still in contact. If we're still in contact, like for food wise containers, plastic is still questionable. So, but it demands a completely setup of the system for circular economy. And most importantly, that's what I have learned, and you have learned with me as well, is that circular models, they work if you think of them by design. So it is about designer, completely different models. Think about refill. If I was going to buy detergent in refills, so, and if they would exist only in refills, you have to, it's so many changes that you have to do. You have to change not just the company, how they sell. They need a different logistics to return the refills, to wash them. They need a different places, an infrastructure for where you can throw my packs so they can be washed. They need consumers to think about that. So when they leave home, they leave with a container, or they know where to come. So it's even like, for example, Coca-Cola. If Coca-Cola would have returnable bottles, the one that are single use, you need a different setup in the streets, because the bins need to be different, because now they are like, there is bins on the streets that you can throw everything. But if you want some of those things to be recycled, to be returnable, you need a different setup in the places that are on the go. So it demands a different way of approaching consumption. And that needs efforts from regulators, trade, companies, consumers. It needs a whole systems change.
Right. Have you worked on any projects that you feel like you were able to accomplish that in?
In terms of circularity, you mean?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no.
I have, it's because I have worked mostly with these companies. I have seen now companies becoming more interested and even acquiring. So Unilever acquired a company called Wild that they have is the
Is it
deodorant on
oh
refillable
yeah.
deodorant.
Yeah, I've seen
So
those.
that's a good sign that they are interested on
Mm.
moving towards that.
That actually,
Uh,
sorry, just side note, that actually explains a lot because I've seen Wild in the shops and there's a similar brand called Fussy, which, so I use the
yeah,
Fussy one. I haven't tried the Wild one
yeah,
yet, but they have the plastic reusable containers. And I've never
yeah,
bothered, I always just buy the cardboard refills and just use the
yeah.
cardboard refills.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
That,
that's a
that
good
actually
one.
explains a lot why the case is plastic because I was thinking about
Yeah.
emailing them the other day and saying, hi, I really want to try your case, but I don't want to buy plastic. So can you make it out of a
Yes,
different
yes.
material?
But at least that's an intention of a case that should last for years and you just
Totally,
buy the
totally.
refill. So there
Yeah,
is this initiative that
for
I
sure.
see
For sure.
that companies are seeing. And this is an interesting case because consumers, those brands were like niche brands,
Mm.
Wild, Fussy on deodorants with refills that
Mm.
started. And I think these big companies paid no attention. And consumers started to value that and using
Right.
more and more, which is another way to bring change,
Mm.
that, and this company has said, well, so they acquired it and now I'm hoping that we're going to see more products from Unilever and refills.
Mm.
Uh,
That'd be great.
but most of there is a good example on circularity by design that I love, but
Mm.
I don't know of many more. But there is of a company called Interface. I don't know if you came across.
The carpets?
Yeah, the carpet one.
Yeah. I wrote my
Um,
high school, like graduating, it wasn't a thesis or a dissertation, but like my high school paper, research paper, I wrote on interface.
yeah, I love them because they transform their business by starting to think in more circular terms.
Right.
So they were a carpet company, especially industrial carpet. So imagine the amount of carpets on buildings and offices, and and motivated by their CEO, they decided to look more into sustainable practices, and they realized that they could design amazing patterns for the carpets that mimic. They also went to a process of biomimicking, mimic the forest floor that is patchy, that is not homogeneous in its color. And they designed the carpets to be also patchy. They would have patches of different colors. So when they install and they sell their carpets, they sell by patch. So if you have before, when there was I don't know, some part of a carpet to change, you need to change the whole thing. Now it is just the different parts because it's built to be modular. So,
Right.
and that's the kind of approach that we need more. You need innovation that it's designed with circularity in their minds, or a bad, that interface is a good example because the
Mm.
rest of so we have so many bad examples like the iPhones or the smartphones that
Right.
they are not designed. They are designed to have what we call planned obsolescence. They become obsolete,
Mm.
and it's what the companies want because then you will buy a new one.
Mm.
But if they design being modular, so I can change features and still keep their heart, their metals,
Yeah.
that they pollute so much, that will be completely different.
Yeah.
And does it mean they will make more money? I don't think so, but it demands them to think about a different way of business, yeah, because then it's about a business of refurbishment, it's
Right.
about a business of upgrading, not a business of selling new stuff and dismissing the previous stuff.
Mm.
So we have the innovation, we have the capabilities. We just need better context that will allow those to thrive.
Yeah, totally. And do you think that there are any incentives that'll make companies shift more towards circular design?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. It has to be a mix of things. It has to be a mix of incentives um, to the ones that become more circular, like tax breaks to the companies that are more circular because they are causing less cost to society. Yeah.
Mm.
There are incentives, there are like taxes, higher taxes for the plastics or banning plastics. But I think it needs to be done with that understanding of that the whole sector needs to change. Everyone needs to change at the same time, because some of the things that stop these companies, in spite of their best intentions, are that if they don't have the lead time for the change of their operating systems, they can't have that lead time, paid for that lead time on their own if the competitors keep selling the unsustainable stuff. So it has to be across the sector. So everyone has to change at the same time. So there is collaboration and coordination for the changes to happen within the companies, with the retail. And in those times, and when those things happen, it does work. Like an example is the plastic bags, when they were banned, or you need to pay. So it was like automatic. Yeah, from now on, if you have plastic bags in the supermarket, you need to pay for them. So then it's easier for consumers to change their behavior, because everywhere I go will ban those. I will have to pay for my plastic bags, so I prefer to carry them out, and then it's set up in people's mind, and that's it.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be an effort, since it's a complex problem, a systems change from, it's companies, it's retails, it's policymakers, it's consumers, and even global, because if I'm going to keep importing cheap stuff from China, but my companies here in the UK are going to so many, taxes and regulations, is also not fair. So it is. It's the complexity of the challenges that we face nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I wanted to bring it back for a second to something that you said at the beginning of our chat, which was that when you were working at Unilever, it was during a time when they were pioneers, like the first ones introducing a sustainability agenda. And so I imagine that was quite exciting, but also kind of knowing what I know now about marketing and kind of the various different opinions that I've heard about marketing, it's often quite a villainized team or like aspect of a company in terms of sustainability, because it can oftentimes lead to greenwashing. So I was kind of curious to hear what was exciting for you at the time, like what you enjoyed about your job, and then also kind of if you had one of those aha moments that kind of made you realize, okay, actually, I really want to focus in on the sustainability side of my work.
Yes. So yes, I was passionate about marketing for almost, 15 years, 16 years. And I think what I was passionate the most, I'm still passionate about, which is understanding what drives people choices, and how can we, in that case, was developing brands and ideas that will motivate people to buy. That's what I was interested about. And when I had this, I'm not sure if that was an aha moment, but as aha period, where I some things wasn't, I was feeling there was something wrong with that, on selling more stuff just because I need to sell more stuff. So I was privileged, and I'm thankful for Unilever that I got a sabbatical, and I started to think differently and look, and had the time actually to ponder upon, well, what's going on with this climate change and this environmental issues, and does this have anything to do with the work I do? So I started to question the role of companies and the role of marketing, and I think if we decouple the skills of marketing, that is about understanding human behavior more than consumer behavior, but human behavior, it's an amazing skill, tools that I try to bring it to my work, as how do we create narratives that motivate people to become more sustainable, both leaders and consumers and users. So that's still through to me. But what I think happens to me now with marketing is I think is a narrow view of the impact that you can have that with the stuff you sell. So I think marketing could have a role of introducing a more holistic view. So not just look at consumers and competitors, but looking at what else are we bringing to the world. And in that sense, bring the questions that could make the business to think differently. So it's not just look at where we're taking the resources to produce the stuff that we want to sell, or what happened at the end of life of the stuff that we sell. And that can be a broader skill and expectation for marketeers that I wish exist more. But again, marketing is a subsystem of a corporate system. So can marketeers do that? It's a difficult one. If the corporate system has some goals and targets, marketing people will have the same targets, and they can disconnect themselves for those corporate targets. So it's also a difficult situation for marketeers that, you know, are more attuned with the need to change, to continue to deliver change in those corporate systems, I think.
Right. Yeah, totally. Do you have any advice for someone who maybe would want to help in some way to better support circularity and sustainability in their team?
I think it is that is first interrogating, I think, is the first thing. So what am I participating with? What I'm contributing to? Yes, I'm growing market share. My brand is gaining many Cannes awards. It is, you know, I see my advertising everywhere. That's great stuff. But what else? What else are you contributing to? And sometimes it's just to paint that elephant in the room for the rest of the people that work with you in the company. And sometimes it's to make the right questions. Sometimes just a question of, are we really sure that we want to use this single-use plastic container in our product? Do we really know what it happens? Sometimes just the right question can produce change. And yeah, so that can be quite a powerful one. But from our same conversation, it's difficult when you're tied to goals of the company that you're working for. Yeah.
Right. I was thinking that though, that is powerful, I think, as a kind of as a notion and as a thought. Was it that kind of mindset and your sabbatical that made you want to leave marketing and start your own consultancy?
I think it was, I after my sabbatical, I did get back to Unilever, and I was very happy to be able to bring some of these questions inside the company, and I still work for almost 2 years, where I brought those questions, where I managed to drive some projects that actually brought some new ways of looking at the categories I was working with. We started to question, well, do we really want to keep relying so much on fossil fuels? And opening up different perspectives. So I think I managed to do that. And that actually, what I saw at that moment in Unilever is what impulsed me. So, okay, so I want to keep doing that, but I don't feel I can do this as much as I wanted if I'm tied with the corporate goals,
right?
Which you are, especially if you're in leadership positions as I was. So that's why I decided to leave and learn and try to work with different sectors and different companies. So
that's amazing. And looking at your work, is there an example of a project that you were really proud of that really allowed significant sustainability and circularity change to happen?
You know, I think with this, I think what I'm mostly proud of from the work that I have done is not really a specific project, is what happened when I bring these new perspectives to a leadership team, to a group of people that didn't have the time to reflect as I had, didn't have the resources, didn't study Harvard, you know? So when I bring these different perspectives that open up their minds and they start to see the impact of the brands and the products that they're involved with in a more holistic way. And when that happens, unexpected things happen. And so I have seen people by realizing, wow, I had no idea that we were doing that negative impact, that we were affecting biodiversity in this way. I had no idea that my packaging would go to the ocean and would do those sorts of things. Creativity unlocks and people start to innovate and to propose ideas that you never expected before. So I have seen that happen. I have seen like people saying, we have this technology of refill that we never did before. But now looking at this, the impact of what we're doing, I think this is the right thing to do. We should push this. So I saw it in Unilever and I have seen in other companies that I have worked with. So the biggest reward is seeing that new lenses, that new perspective stay with them. It's almost like once you see, you can't unsee.
Right.
So I see the people in these organizations like taking new perspectives that is stayed with them. I think I want to believe, and I've seen that it goes beyond their work. So I think that's and impact can happen, many years on the line. Maybe some of the people end up leaving, but they go to a company where they do a huge impact because they still stay with that, or they change their lives. So impact has many levels, and so I think that's what's been that stays and is always rewarding for me. So it's almost like we all have the ability that if we kind of free our minds and see things from a more systemic view, to unleash possibilities that we wouldn't see otherwise.
Totally. And I love that because then you're inspiring other people to go out into the system and change the system in their own way as well.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
amazing. I love that.
Mm.
I think that's such a nice and uplifting note to end on. But before we close out fully, I'd like to ask you something that I ask all of my guests, which is what's one curiosity that you'd like our listeners to look more into or to research? And that can be anything. It can be a book, a documentary, a movement, a way of life, a philosophy, like literally anything at all.
I have two books, I think, from two amazing women that they have inspired me to do my work and to affect my life. I think the thing on sustainability is that I don't see it as a new area that I learn, a new discipline, and probably happens with many people that we saw in our masters, and yourself as well, Isabel, is that it changes your way of being in the world.
Really?
It changes your worldview. So it not just I work in sustainability, but I'm like don't care about plastic in my house. It would never happen. So and in that sense, there are two books, two authors that have been very inspiring to me. One is the one I mentioned at the beginning. So is Donella Meadows with her book Thinking in Systems. I think she describes and look at the world in terms of relationships rather than on things in a way that stayed with me forever and has changed my work completely, and to understand the complexities of the world with lenses I never had before. And another author is Joanna Macy. I don't know if you heard of her.
No.
Her book, two books from her, is Active Hope, where she talks about it. It's the title says a lot, how you can keep striving for a better future, better planet, while also holding the space to honor the pain that we have from what's happened to the planet. And so you can have both and keep advancing on it. And she has another wonderful book that is The World as a Lover. So yeah, those two authors, Joanna Macy and Donella Meadows, have been a huge inspiration for me. And I invite your listeners to look at them.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and endeavors and mindset shifts. I've loved hearing about it.
No, it was a pleasure. It's been amazing talking to you. I loved your questions. It made me ponder a lot of things, which is great. We need more critical thinking and debate. So I love difficult questions in that sense. And I congratulate you for your podcast, which is amazing. I'm following it, and I'm looking forward to keep listening to it. So thank you so much, Isabel, and thank you and congratulate you for this amazing initiative.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind.